Lore. Noun. Traditional knowledge or belief. At its most rudimentary level, this is how lore is defined. However, this simple noun has managed to become a core pillar in many contemporary fictional works within the last century. J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth saga, Star Wars, Star Trek, The Witcher, the Marvel and DC universes, The Elder Scrolls, Warcraft, Diablo, and so many more that it would take hours to list them all off. In all of these works, lore is the mechanism by which writers give context to readers/players in order to immerse them in the world in which they've created. A talented author can utilize carefully articulated words on a page, or perhaps even well-crafted imagery, in order to build their fictitious world within the minds of their consumers. And when put into this context, lore is just simply another language. And one of the most important things to recognize about a language is, it's not simply just a collection of words. It tells the stories of those who speak it. J.R.R. Tolkien himself understood the importance of language decades before he ever wrote The Hobbit. And as a result, he provided us with one of the most lore-rich fictional universes ever created. Middle-earth, its settings, its characters, and its storylines are so timeless that the universe is still being revisited until this day. Lore is a language, and without it, or poorly constructed, your fictional universe is devoid of all meaning. Now, with all of this being said, let us pivot to the Destiny universe and its lore. Is the lore in Destiny its own language? Does it engage us with the greater universe as a whole and get us invested in the characters? Why yes it does, quite spectacularly. You have to look no further than the lore books for the Book of Sorrows, Maracena, and the Unveiling to see some of the greatest writing that the annals of Destiny has to offer. Reading these allows you to gain deeper insight into the Hive as an enemy race, the history and motivations of Queen Marasov, as well as the Awoken she brought with her to the Reef, and the philosophical and personal motivations for the Winnower, the presumed leader of the Darkness. These lore books do a fantastic job of building up the Destiny universe and its characters, but it is not perfect. Within a video game, lore comes in 3 different flavors. You have lore that builds up the universe itself, lore that develops the characters, and then finally, lore that feeds directly back into the gameplay loop. Destiny excels at the first 2 types, but completely omits the third. There isn't a lore entry that provides a cryptic clue to discover a well-hidden secret. There isn't a lore entry that gives you a clue on how to defeat a boss such as the Sanctified Mind. There aren't even lore entries about specific enemy types, what their fears are, and how we as players can use it against them. Destiny is supposed to be a high fantasy, science fiction RPG, and it is a bit of an oddity that lore that directly ties back into gameplay is missing. It's a damn shame. So, how can Bungie correct this? Well, before we talk about that, I'd like to read a lore entry to you, one that I think is relevant to this discussion. It reads as follows. At the highest point of our city lies the fountain, a wellspring of pure water that flows throughout our civilization. It is the jewel of the Awoken, the life giver, and yet its waters speak of a clouded future. As we come to understand the paths of time and space more clearly, we have begun to glimpse rough tatters of past and future, glittering behind reality like soft lights behind a curtain. We have seen the fountain in these glimpses, pouring darkness instead of water, and we cannot guess what the visions mean. What a strange and cryptic piece of lore, yes? Was this piece of lore a precursor to the curse in the Dreaming City? Is this fountain critical to our quest to break the curse? I'm afraid not. This piece of lore is not relevant to Destiny. Well, how can that be, you might ask? That would be because I've deceived you. I changed one word in this lore entry and it has completely changed the entire meaning. Now you may be angry with me for making such a subtle change, but allow me to replace the one word that I changed to the original version and it will all make sense. Ready? No, you're not seeing that word wrong. That says Chozo. And you've probably figured out by now that this lore entry isn't from Destiny at all. It's from a completely different game. One of my favorite games of all time, as a matter of fact. A game that is of the same topical genre as Destiny, but yet managed to get its lore perfect. I speak of the 2002 Gamecube title, Metroid Prime. This game was ahead of its time both technically and from a writing standpoint. It contains all three types of lore that we are looking for. World building lore, character development lore, and lore that feeds back directly into gameplay. And the best part is, you only have to play Metroid Prime's first 20 minutes to see all this lore in action. The prologue on the frigate Orpheon is one of the most beautifully constructed intro stages that I have ever seen in a video game. It not only teaches you how to play the game, but puts you knee deep in the game's story right off the bat. In the first 60 seconds of gameplay, you're taught how to use the scan visor, which is how you collect all of the game's lore, which in effect makes it all optional. Just like Destiny. The story is there if you want it. Starting in the airlock of the Orpheon, you find out that Deck Alpha's environment has become unstable due to an unspecified accident, and that an emergency evacuation order has been issued. When you arrive in the next room, you see the corpses of various creatures on the floor. The largest one being a parasite that has been horribly mutated through genetic experimentation. The smaller ones being those of the space pirates, who have met gruesome deaths either through the severing of the spinal cord or through numerous acidic burns. You also notice that all the escape pods have been launched, so most of the crew have already went down to the planet below. When you reach the map station, you find terminals that detail how 2 Parasite Queen specimens became volatile, and that other parasite specimens escaped into the ventilation ducts on decks Beta and Gamma. Well, we've already seen one Parasite Queen, it's dead. So there's still another one lurking about. You eventually reach the specimen holding area and discover that the space pirates have been experimenting with a new radioactive substance called Phazon. They've been administering batches of Phazon to the native creatures of Talon 4 and documenting if any meaningful mutations occur. However, most of these experiments result in rejection and the specimen dies. You also come across a couple of live space pirates, one with his legs broken and the other one with severe internal bleeding. They can't fight back, so you just have to put them out of their misery. Continuing through the holding area, you discover a lorebook entry that details the frigate Orpheon's last moments in orbit above planet Zebes before Mother Brain is destroyed in the original Metroid. The Orpheon and 2 other frigates went into warp shortly after Mother Brain's destruction in order to elude capture from the Federation. The Orpheon came here to Talon 4 hoping it would not be discovered. Continuing to explore the area, you witness several specimens that have yet to be experimented upon, as well as another Parasite Queen that has been dead for some time. You also scan several more terminals documenting the space pirates' initial successes in generating Phazon-based mutations. You then encounter 3 more space pirates. One is minimally injured, one has a brain hemorrhage which hinders his aim, and then the last one, his joints have been welded together by acid burns. Again, you are forced to put them down. In the next area, you find a report that says that there is an obstruction in the reactor core's ventilation system, and that the engineering crew was dispatched to remove it. Descending down to the reactor core, there are several space pirate corpses on the ground. Several causes of death are noted through your autopsy scans. Lacerations to the chest, removal of internal organs, acid burns to the face, partial devourment, removal of blood, and your suit also tells you that these space pirates have not been here for very long. Something predatory killed them all, and it's close. Entering the reactor core chamber, you come face to face with the Predator. a parasite queen, horribly mutated beyond its original form. Scanning the parasite queen informs you that a mutation now allows it to fire a plasma beam from its mouth, but at the same time the mouth has become a vital weak point. Damaging the parasite queen's mouth after the scan will now cause bonus damage. So much bonus damage in fact that 4 to 5 charge beam shots will take her down. Defeating the parasite queen causes her to fall directly into the reactor core, resulting in an imminent meltdown. You then have 8 minutes to escape before the reactor explodes. As you make your escape, you witness the space pirates kill off the final parasite queen specimen they have in captivity. You also come across Ridley, who has been resurrected thanks to cybernetic enhancements. As Ridley escapes the Orpheon to head planetside, your power suit suffers severe damage, and you lose several critical abilities as a result. Unwavered by her now weakened state, Samus makes her way planetside to pursue Ridley. This then concludes the prologue, and the adventure formally begins. Now, everything you just heard me tell you was from the first 20 minutes of the game. Playing back through it again, I was in awe and wonderment that an 18-year-old game managed to immerse me so quickly. And once you're planetside, it only gets better from there. You get tons of scannable objects granting context for the world around you, as well as numerous pages of lore for the 5 lore books, one of which is entirely dedicated to all of the creatures in the game. That's right, every enemy and every boss gets a lore entry, and that entry specifies what the enemy is, what its behaviors are, and any potential weaknesses you can exploit. The lore entries for the bosses tend to be a bit more cryptic with their clues, but if you look at all the scannable objects leading up to the boss fight as well as reading some of the lore books, you may glean additional hints on how to fight them. One of the best examples of this is the final boss himself, the Metroid Prime. In the Space Pirate lore book, it details the Space Pirates' encounters with the Metroid Prime. It explains that in their attempts to contain it, it ends up absorbing numerous types of energy weaponry, as well as armor plating to give itself a hard carapace. It isn't long afterwards that the Metroid Prime escapes the Space Pirates' custody. Now, shortly afterward, the Space Pirates develop new armor and weapons based on Samus's different beam types. These soldiers can only be hurt by matching the beam type that they are using. The Metroid Prime absorbed prototypes of this exact technology, and that is how you defeat him. Are y'all starting to see where I'm going with this? How the lore of Metroid Prime not only is enhancing the story, but also teaching you how to defeat certain foes. But if this isn't enough to show you how Metroid Prime's lore is better than Destiny's, then allow me to hit the point home regarding the final area of the game. Early on in Metroid Prime, you can gain access to the Chozo Artifact Temple. This temple was erected over the crash site of a meteor that struck Talon 4 50 years prior to the start of the game. That meteor is what brought the Metroid Prime to Talon 4, as well as the radioactive substance Phazon, the very same substance that the Space Pirates had been using in their genetic experiments. Left unchecked, the meteorite would have corrupted the planet from the inside out, turning it into a planet of pure Phazon. In order to stop this, the Chozo constructed the Artifact Temple and placed a magical seal over the meteorite. To finish the game, you the player must locate 12 Chozo artifacts in order to undo the magical seal and gain access to the impact crater. The game gives you one of the artifacts completely for free. It's up to you to locate the other 11. To help with your search, you can scan the totems in the Artifact Temple to add pages to a new lore book called Artifacts. Each entry gives you a cryptic clue as to the location of a specific artifact. It's up to you to take the cryptic clues provided from those lore pages and translate them into contextual clues that you can actually use. Now, since this is required to finish the game, could you classify this as a overglorified MacGuffin hunt? Sure, you could, but there's a subtle brilliance to it. Hunting down the artifacts brings you into contact with upgrades and expansions to your suit that you may have missed the first time around. By going on this artifact hunt, Retro Studios is passively preparing you for the final boss fight. And by the time that 12th artifact is in your hands, you should be more than prepared. It's brilliant, and it works so well that Retro Studios decided to implement a similar quest in Metroid Prime 2 towards the end of the game. So, what do we take away from all this? What has Metroid Prime done here with its lore that Destiny could learn from? First off, creature lore. Now, Destiny 1 did do this to a limited extent in the Grimoire. We did get cards for the different enemy types, dregs, thralls, acolytes, even certain bosses. But it was limited in that you learned just about the base history of the creature or perhaps their motivations, but you didn't learn anything about maybe how to fight them or maybe ways you could get bonus damage on them or something like that. And in Destiny 2's current state, this lore is non-existent. I mean, imagine if they did a specific lore entry just for the Riven fight. It could have said something to the effect of, Riven of 1,000 voices, Ahamkara, an architect of the Dreaming City, now taken by the Witch Queen Savathun. Only a select few may now gaze through the eyes of this creature and glean its intent. Short entries such as this, for every enemy and every major boss in the game, can go a long way. Now, the other thing that Destiny can learn from Metroid Prime regarding its lore is lore that connects directly to secrets. Imagine if, say, the Maracena lore book implicitly gave you clues as to where to find the Ascendant chests or the Ascendant challenges, or the book Inquisition of the Damned gave you clues on how to do the Xenophage quest once you got to the dungeon section of it, or the Aspect lore book gave cryptic clues to locate the chests within the Garden of Salvation raid. The list of possibilities is endless, but I'll tell you what you shouldn't do, Bungie. Does everyone remember the Truth to Power lore book where it had that little blurb about getting to power level 999 and soloing the Shattered Throne dungeon in order to break the curse on the Dreaming City? And then the first person who actually did it, nothing happened and we got trolled? Yeah, don't do stuff like that. It's one thing to have lore that intentionally misdirects the players, but it's another thing entirely when you have lore that manipulates us into doing something that's just going to waste our time. And let me tell you, most players do not like to have their time wasted. So please, don't do something like that again. Look to Metroid Prime's example and have a tangible in-game reward at the end of that tunnel, even if it's just a passive one. If Bungie can nail this and get some proper creature lore going, then Destiny will be a far greater franchise for it. Anyway guys, I'm starting to reach the end of my thought process or train of thinking on this whole matter. I hope you all understand what I've been trying to get at with this video. It all makes perfect sense to me in my head, but I have been told before that sometimes my thinking process doesn't always jive with everybody. But I hope at least in this case I got my point across. I mean, by all means, use the comment section down below to tell me if these ideas I have resonate with you, or perhaps you just don't get what I'm talking about at all and I've just gone way over your head. Whichever way it goes, I really want to hear from you guys. And on that note, that's all I have for you all today. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you disliked it, show it to your enemies. Every bit of engagement helps, yes? And now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to see if I can convince my friends to try to help me 3-man the entrance of Scourge of the Past, which we have not done successfully since it launched. But maybe today is the day. Maybe it's today. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Now where's my Starfire protocol?